Call to order the Tuesday, July 17th informational meeting of the Sioux Falls City Council. Welcome to those here at Carnegie Town Hall and those of you watching on CityLink and on siouxfalls.org. We appreciate your participation. We're kind of a light crowd today because as Councilor Entenmann said to me the other day, it is the dog days of summer, and so we have 3 of our council members not with us this afternoon and this evening, and so we shall continue to work in their absence and wish them well. First on the agenda is a report of the Public Services Committee meeting from Tuesday, July 10th. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. At the Public Services Committee, July 10th, the agenda started with a false alarm ordinance. Chief Bartell reviewed the proposed ordinance, explained the background and statistical information concerning the number of police calls that are alarm related. Chief Bartell explained how many calls are actual alarms, how many are human error, weather related, etc. Basically, the changes that they want to make are with the alarm calls that are more frequent and are basically under the human error format, and trying to find some way of reducing those numbers, and also with that applying fees to those businesses or residentials that are above the number of regular alarm calls. That was moved on to full council consideration, and will be first reading, I believe, will be on the 7th of August. The second agenda item was distracted driving ordinance. This is something that is starting to get a lot of attention, and I don't know about the other committee members, but I've gotten a few emails on that now. The ordinance that we're reviewing would ban texting while driving and make it a primary offense, and this would cover all drivers within the city limit. This also was moved forward to the City Council for consideration. The committee felt that we've waited long enough for the state to make some kind of decision on this, and that someone had to lead. And I hope that the state will take a look at what we're doing and continue to move forward on this. That also will have a first reading on August 7th. And with that, we adjourn.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Anderson. Questions for Councilor Anderson? Councilor Jamieson.
Councilor Anderson, do you know when you were discussing the false alarm changes and charges for those, were you just trying to eliminate all the high volume call usage? Was it just for fire and or false alarms, or was there a need to reduce, or did you look at other things that the police were being called for on a higher than normal scale?
No, this was just on alarms.
Just on alarms. And
also, it also gives us a good gauge on how many alarm companies are out there. There's been a trend of these fly-by-night alarm companies coming in, you know, and installing alarms in businesses and residentials, and then don't have the support here in the city that's necessary for something like that. So I think it's getting a good gauge on how many alarm companies we have, working with those companies if they have accounts that are problem accounts, and trying to find out why they are problem accounts and correcting that before we get into a fee situation.
If I could, the last time this was reviewed, there was a problem with it. I can't remember exactly what the problem was. Did you guys cover that?
Councilor Aguilar remembers that better than I do. When that false alarm ordinance first came to council, there were concerns about it. Those concerns, we were told, have been addressed in this iteration of the ordinance. Do you recall what they were, though, Councilor Aguilar?
I believe that one of them was that they were going to use an independent agency in order to, and then there was also going to be a fee to residents if they had an alarm, and both of those things have been eliminated.
There would be a fee to residents as they installed the alarm. There was
Right.
an installation fee to the city, which is not in this version of the ordinance.
Yes, in this, it is just for the business itself, I believe.
The actual false alarm, when the
Right.
actual false alarm
Well,
happens.
that is, yeah, if there is a false alarm, the first one they get free, and then after that, it progressively goes up. But there also is like an application fee of some type. I don't have my paperwork with me.
I think I remember the third party was the issue, but very good. I support that. I think that's a good idea to move that forward. The distracted driving one, if I could, I've been talking to some people about that. It's a funny thing to try to argue that you should not ban texting. Challenge yourself to try to do that. It doesn't work. It makes a lot of good sense. But one of the questions I've been trying to come up with is, just like the false alarm ordinance that you're working on had a lot of great statistical data behind it that states here's the false alarms and here's the time it takes, and you can justify the reason for creating a new ordinance. Did you have or do you have any objectable data that says exactly where distracted driving is causing a problem, how that, I just think it'd be important for us to validate our argument that it's hard to argue against, trust me. I've tried and you can't. But I think we need some of that data that says, look, there's 50 people killed in our community who were distracted drivers or something like that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
If I
Do
might,
you have any data like that
if I
anymore?
might, Councilor Anderson,
Please.
we do have data like that. The committee ended up, we have our legislative operations manager helped us work through a lot of the research, and we kind of in committee ended up making it a kumbaya session because we were all so supportive of it. But yes, there's dramatic data in terms of what distracted driving does, and the kinds of accidents that it creates, the injuries, the deaths that are, and it's nationwide figures. It's not just here. The other piece of it for me, Councilor Jameson, was that we are one of the few states left that doesn't have some kind of ban, and so it was, it's kind of one of those. Yes, Councilor Aguilar.
I would suggest that we have Jim David send some of those studies to the remainder of the council prior to, because there is enough information there. And I am receiving a lot of positive emails in regard to this issue.
I'm getting an affirmative from Jim David, so the other council members will see that same material that we have seen. Other questions regarding Public Services Committee? Questions or comments? Thank you for your report, Councilor Anderson. It was kind of an exciting meeting. We did a lot of good stuff.
It is. I think that the distracted driving ordinance is going to get a lot of discussion, and I think it's a good thing, though, that that discussion happens. I've spoken to parents, businessmen, teenagers who say that this is something that Sioux Falls needs to handle because in the smaller communities they don't have the traffic that we have here. And I'll admit I'm even fighting myself to keep myself from reaching down for my phone and everything now. And I think it's more of an awareness type of thing that will happen. It's not going to be so much the legal end of it, but just the knowledge that it's not allowed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. Thank you for your report, Councilor Anderson. Moving on to City Council open discussion. Any items regarding that? Councilor Jameson?
I've got 2 items on the consent agenda tonight for the approval of contracts and agreements that I just peeked at that I thought I'd ask a few questions about. There's 2 items there. One is just so it wouldn't be a surprise tonight, more so, and maybe if we need answers we could get it, but the Space Needs Assessment Agreement for Services from TSP for $19,900. Were you or anybody else aware of a needs assessment? Or what that's about? Or for central services it says. Well, and then the other one is under Parks and Rec, there's the Lovett Theater Master Plan Agreement for engineering services for the same amount, $19,900. And I'd certainly learned about the Lovett Pavilion project, but I wasn't aware that we were moving forward and actually starting to spend money on those projects, or that project. So I'm just looking for a little more information on this, if I could, for tonight's meeting.
Councilor Anderson.
Councilman Jamison, have you requested to pull those items so that we can get an explanation on those?
I just pulled them when I pulled this when I was reviewing for the meeting tonight, and I saw them as red flags, or at least something I should ask about. So I haven't asked anybody, so here I am.
Councilor Anderson, do you have add to that?
I guess I'd like to request that those two items be pulled and that we get an explanation on those. I know it's late in the game, but I think that at any point in time, the way it was explained with these contracts, if we have questions, and I definitely have questions on the Levitt, I guess, because we haven't approved anything yet for that.
Right.
And to start expending money on something we haven't approved yet.
Okay, just let me think out loud for a minute then, if you would. We kind of had a gentleman's agreement when it came to the contracts that we would give 24 hours notice if we were going to pull something.
Right.
So here, I'm not against pulling it if we really, if it's that important to us. But I want to hear from the group. How do we, what do you think? Councilor Intamin?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe for the Levitt Pavilion one, there was something about a need to study the clay cap, but I guess I just would, and I don't know what the appropriate procedure would be either. If we could just pull those two out of the consent agenda just for discussion before we approve all of them, or Dave, maybe the city attorney can give us some idea.
The city attorney is saying that we could just discuss them without pulling them, because the fear then if we pull them off the consent agenda is that they might not pass then if we vote on them later, correct?
Well, and I have no problem with that, as long as we can discuss those two.
Discuss
I would
them.
like to discuss them before we okay that. I agree with Councilor Jamison.
Okay.
I have a
Councilor
question. Do
Aguilar.
we have enough people to do that? Well, I don't know. We've only got 5 people here tonight.
We can discuss them though
So
before
we're
we
just going to
approve it.
discuss them
Those two items.
during consent.
But we don't have the opportunity to pull them then, to vote separately on them. I think we should be clear about, before we go into it, knowing that all we can do this time is ask questions if we only have 5 people.
I think there's a good explanation there. In the data that we have here, there is just no explanation about what these two are for. And I think whoever, if they would just explain that to us, I don't think there'd be an issue.
Right, I think that's exactly right. Jim David, do you want to come forward, please?
Just referring to the red notes there, we are going to need to amend the consent agenda. There is an item we're going to have to pull off of there. It is agenda item number 9.
That's right.
And from my understanding, is that we would need a unanimous vote in order to remove that item. Everything tonight has to be unanimous votes, basically, all 5, so.
So we could pull them and discuss them, or we could just discuss them if we're comfortable with that. If we get to the point in the discussion, though, where we are not comfortable with it, I'm going to encourage us to pull them.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. Councilor Aguilar?
I do agree with Councilor Anderson Jr., though, that we have not taken any action other than being apprised of the Levitt.
Right,
So-
right. I agree. I'm not disagreeing. Mr. David, if I might bug you one more time, would you be kind enough before 5 o'clock to contact Sue Quambeck-Enton from Central Services and Don Kearney from Parks and Rec and let them know that that's what's going to happen?
Yep, we're just going to do that.
It's not a negative, but that we really do just need some explanation before we vote?
Yep.
Thank
I'll
you
get
very
right on
much.
that. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Other comments, questions, open discussion type things. Did that cover that for everyone okay?
Yep.
All right. Yes, Councilor Anderson.
Also, Councilman Jamison, I don't know if you did pass that information along that you have in print. but I think that would be something that would be very informational,
Regarding?
actually printed out and given to us.
Oh,
for
printing
our
out
meetings. Yes.
the contract items from the
The
consent
way
agenda.
that that's set up there is very
They are
clear.
available on SIRE, Council Anderson, so
Right.
you can just pull them up there as for the benefit of the public as well.
I think what Councilor Anderson and I were talking about prior to the meeting was that, and with Councilor Intiman as well, is that the sometimes when we prepare for meetings, you know, we look at the red notes and all of our notes, but we often don't print that out or to even look at it online. And the thought was if they were printed out, that would almost force us to look through it. But so it would be helpful, I sense from at least Councilor Anderson, that if we had it in front of us, that perhaps we wouldn't overlook it.
Okay. Yes. Councilor Intiman?
I guess I would, knowing how busy things do get, and it's an excuse, I understand that. But I would agree with Councilor Jamison. If we could just have staff, when they circulate that, just print those off for us. I'm a very simplistic person, and it's awful hard for me to go through all of that stuff sometimes in the heat of the action, as you know.
I'm learning that. Thank you, Councilor Intiman. Again, thinking out loud, though. Think out loud with me, folks. Procedurally, how do we do this? This agenda with those items is released to SIRE on Friday afternoon.
Just have our staff send them to us. Just have the staff send them to us. Just email them to us, too. That's all.
And you will print them out yourselves?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. And I, of course, sent Jim David off to do something else. If I might just leave a message with staff that we would like those sent separately, that would be awesome. All right. Any other crazy little things we can mess up with only 5 of us here today? Yes, Denise.
Just to be clear, you want the contracts and you want the order changes, those first 2 items printed out.
Just emailed to us separately.
Just those 2 items.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, Councilor.
Clarification, though, on Friday or when? Because if, with the contracts, if we want to adhere to that gentleman's agreement, we would.
To look at those early.
Yeah,
you know, that was
so-
part of kind of our deal. I mean, we didn't make a deal, but we were trying to make that as easy as possible for staff. Yes, Denise.
Maybe we could just request that when it is emailed to us, that the council's just included on the email.
Oh, perfect.
Yes. Beautiful. Thank you. Staff will follow up on that for us. Thank you. Any other open discussion? Then I'm going to throw another little monkey wrench in our deals here, folks. We do have a work session scheduled for 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, correct? And I haven't said anything to Dave Bixler about this yet, but with only 5 of us here, is that appropriate? Are we comfortable going ahead with the CIP conversation in a work session? Again, thinking out loud, looking for input.
I think it'd be just perfect, and we wouldn't have to hassle with those other guys.
Oh, this is true.
No.
Our true colors are going to show.
Something in the air. I don't know what it is. There's fumes about the
Heat, Greg.
heat.
It is quite warm today, for the record. Just looking, again, for input, comments, thoughts.
I've got it scheduled. I guess I'm set, but if, you know, I can appreciate the lack of attendance if. So.
Okay. Well, it will be good brainstorming, smaller group. We can maybe get down to some nitty-gritty even in more detail. Great. Just wanted to throw that out there. Anything else for open discussion this afternoon? Great. Good. Thank you all so much. We'll move ahead to presentations. Our June monthly financial report with Tracy Turbeck, Director of Finance. Welcome, Tracy.
Good afternoon. Tracy Turbeck with Finance Office. Nice and cool in here. Glad we aren't doing this outside. Although the air might be a little better to breathe. Halfway through the year, June 30th. It's a good time for us to get perspective on our finances. I know all the directors see that as an important milestone in terms of measuring their budget. So it's hard to believe we're already halfway through this fiscal year, though. We will, as almost always, my report this month will be brief, but I do have a number of slides to go through, many of which that you're familiar with. Unemployment rate in Sioux Falls continues to improve. Again, this data is always about a month behind because of the time it takes for those statistics to come out, but the May unemployment rate in our Sioux Falls MSA dropped to 3.8%, which is more than 1 full percentage point lower than where we were 2 years ago, and more than 0.5% lower than where we were a year ago. So 2012 is showing signs of improving, continuing to improve in terms of the employment picture here in our statistical area. Likewise, building permit activity continues to be strong. We started out the year very well, and it has continued to run very, very strong. In this chart, we show 3 years worth of data. It's year to date each month, so you can kind of see how each month builds on the next. The green bar represents the 2012 data, and if you look at June, you can see the green bar is far out beyond 2011 and 2010 data, and those are based on the dollar value of building permit activity. Through June, so for the first half of the year, Building Services has issued building permits for projects valued at $204 million compared to about $130 million last year. So it's an increase of about $75 million, or more than 57% year over year. That's quite a pace to set. I don't know that we can expect that at the end of the year we will see a 57% increase, but certainly a very good indicator of the level of construction activity and plans in the community. Sales taxes continue to show solid growth. This chart shows over a 24-month period of time that rolling growth rate. 2 years ago in June, we were shrinking. Our sales tax revenues were actually shrinking at a rate of 3.4% annually. A year ago, we had improved to a growth rate of 4.9%, and it has stayed really for the last year and a half or so between a 4 and a 6% growth rate, and we're currently running at 5.6% growth year over year on a 12-month basis. So again, very, very favorable, very solid growth in our retail sector. Very similar chart here. This is looking at just the entertainment tax, which is on alcoholic beverages and restaurant meals and motel rooms. Similar picture in that 2 years ago we were seeing this revenue source shrink as well. It has took a little longer to pick up steam. A year ago we were at 3.8% growth, and it's currently running at 6.2% annually. So that's reflective, I think, of the nature of the transactions that are subject to that tax. They are much more discretionary, so if to the extent you can consider that a positive thing in the local economy, people evidently feel like they have more discretionary money to spend eating out and drinking beer, which we can all appreciate. This chart shows the side-by-side the revenue and expenditure data for the general fund, comparing on a year-to-date basis, month by month, 2011 to 2012. You can see we're tracking very well in comparison year over year, and I might mention too that on a budgetary basis comparison, revenues as of the end of June, the actual revenues are at 50% of what we budgeted, so it's really tracking right where we would expect. Expenditures are at 48% of budget through June, so and largely that is due to the savings that we saw early in the year on our snow removal budget. We spent very little money early in the year on removing snow. I would also mention that, and it's mentioned in the commentary in the monthly report that you receive electronically, that favorable expenditure experience is in spite of the fact that we did not budget for the cost of living increase that was later negotiated for 2012 for city employees. So my expectation is, and we've talked about this before, that at some point later on this year, we'll probably be before you looking for a supplement for at least some of those departments that have not been able to absorb that cost of living increase that was negotiated after the budget had been established. Any questions?
Councilor Jameson.
Tracy, could you review that supplemental piece again? I was reading something and you caught me with supplemental and I didn't catch the rest.
Sure. The winding back the clock, when the 2012 budget was set, the collective bargaining agreements had not been struck yet, and so we did not budget for a cost of living increase, and that's partly a strategic move, I suppose, not to tip your hand in terms of what you're going to put in your budget for a pay increase. And so the budget was set with no COLA budgeted, and then the contracts were later settled. So the departments, many of them are able to absorb that additional cost without a supplement, but there are some of the smaller ones that have smaller departments that have less flexibility, less places within their budget to absorb those dollars. So I do anticipate that there will be some that will require a supplement before the end of the year.
Okay. Other questions? Councilor Anderson.
The arterial street funding. In basically showing the history of this, in 09, 10, and 11, we've generated about $3 million a year with that 1/8 of a cent sales tax. Yet in 2012, you have it down as, is this just so far this year, or is this what is expected for the entire year?
This would be the actual collections for 6 months,
Okay.
first half of the year.
That answers my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions for Tracy? Seeing none, thank you very much, Tracy.
Thank you.
Appreciate your report. Anything else for the group during this informational meeting? We stand adjourned.